Well, we've called the meeting to order already. We had an executive session before the meeting, so it's already been called to order, and the roll has been called. We'll move on to announcements. The first item on the agenda under announcements is a proclamation declaring May 9th Richard Eastman Day in the village of Yellow Springs. And I see Lily and Roy here. And what we're going to do is, for those of you who aren't aware, there's a brand new beautiful covered bridge at the end of Hyde Road that replaced the bridge that was there, the narrow bridge, and the cupola was just placed on it today. I mean, it's a kind of an engineering marvel. For those of you who don't know, Richard Eastman used to be the Greene County engineer, and so Bob Geyer, who is the current Greene County engineer, decided it would be a great tribute to name the bridge after Dick Eastman. The fact that it leads to the Vale is even better. So now we're not going to be giving you the, I'm just going to sit here and read this. The formal presentation by our mayor, which is most important, will happen on Friday. The bridge will be dedicated this coming Friday, May 9th at 10 o'clock. And he wants everyone to come to the Hyde Roads, or to the Corey Street side of the bridge. That's where the dedication will be. So, proclamation declaring May 9th, 2014, Richard Eastman Day in the village of Yellow Springs. Richard Eastman has lived in and contributed significantly to the spirit and vitality of Yellow Springs and Miami Township, as demonstrated by a life of integrity and service to family and community. And whereas Richard Eastman, a native of Springfield, Ohio, and the son of Clark County engineer Robert F. Eastman, attended the Old Springfield High School and then enrolled at Antioch College in 1938, completing an Antioch College engineering degree in 1958 after a lengthy interruption while serving as a conscientious objector during the war and starting a family. And whereas Richard Eastman and his wife Wilberta believed so strongly in the value of community that they made a conscious decision to live in one community to raise their family and live their adult lives, even if that meant changing jobs or careers. And whereas Richard and Wilberta Eastman were founding members of the Vale community, an integral part of the wider Yellow Springs community, where they raised 4 children, John, Rachel, David, and Roy. And whereas Richard Eastman, in order to live true to his commitments, held many jobs while living in Yellow Springs: a baker of whole wheat bread, a union carpenter constructing I-75 north from Dayton, an engineer with International Harvester in Springfield, a faculty member and acting dean of students at Antioch College, an acting executive secretary of the American Friends Service Committee, Dayton Regional Office, before entering public service. And whereas Richard Eastman entered public service as deputy Greene County engineer in 1973 and was named Greene County engineer on January 1st, 1974 to succeed Ray Klein, and was subsequently elected to 5 full terms as Greene County engineer, retiring in December 1996 at the age of 76. And whereas Richard Eastman served faithfully as Greene County engineer and in that time contributed greatly to the safety, security, and prosperity of Greene County by directing the maintenance and development of hundreds of miles of roads and numerous bridges in Greene County. And whereas Richard Eastman, a lifelong Quaker, helped found the Yellow Springs Friends Meeting, and after retirement served the meeting in numerous capacities, including service on the board of the Friends Care Community. And whereas Richard Eastman loved covered bridges and worked to preserve the covered bridges of Greene County, including having one bridge moved to Yellow Springs Creek in Glen Helen. And whereas Richard Eastman was a key supporter in developing the initial bike path segment from Yellow Springs to Xenia. And whereas the new covered bridge on Hyde Road over the bike path at the head of the lane at the Vale is being dedicated by the current Greene County engineer Robert Geyer as the Richard P. Eastman Hyde Road Covered Bridge on May 9th, 2014. Now therefore I, it says David Tobert, as mayor of the village of Yellow Springs, do hereby declare May 9th, 2014, Richard Eastman Day in the village of Yellow Springs. Congratulations.
If you want.
Yeah, would you like, why don't, can you come over?
Yeah. I know Mary.
I really.
Of course, this is a very great honor to be named as the Richard D. Eastman Bridge. And we have known Bob Geyer for years and years. When Dick was county engineer, Bob Geyer was his deputy. And so we have known him for a long time. And just today, I've been watching them put the cupola on top of it. Oh, these magnificent machines that are carrying that loads. They could carry this whole cupola on the end of the fork that goes up there. And so I watched them put it on and how they nailed it. Oh, they must have been able to get inside it. I couldn't see just what they were doing, but I think they were able to get inside this cupola and nail it all the way. It's been all so wonderful constructed right from the very beginning. It's a beautiful one, and I hope you all will come out and take a look at it on May the 9th. At 10 o'clock, it will be open. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Oh, come on.
That would be very exciting.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You want to stay?
Bye, Billy.
Bye-bye.
Roy.
Thank you for
Thanks for
coming.
coming.
We'll see you on Friday.
You can get wonderful pictures from the county engineer of how it went up.
And next on the agenda is Melissa Van Zan's here to talk about the summer watering sewer rate. Come on up.
Okay, I had put in the packet kind of a background on the summer yard and garden watering program, which started in 2012 and continued on into the summer of last year. And basically what this is it's a program that residents can sign up for that will give them an adjustment if they are watering their garden or their yard during the months of June, July, and August. So they sign up, and what we do is we take a look at what their usage was in January, February, March, and then we look at the difference between what they did in June, July, and August, and any difference we adjust off the sewer, because presumably if they're watering their garden or their yard, then the water isn't going into the sewer system and therefore shouldn't be charged for it. So this was a program that had been approved by council, and I kind of gave some statistics in the packet. We had 41 people in 12, and then in 13 we had 21 people, and the cost of adjustments was right around $2,000 for both years at $5.70 per 1,000 gallons is kind of how we came up with that. So we ask that every year people re-enroll, and annual sign-ups are important for us because it helps us know who is still doing this and if they still need it or not. And it allows us to be able to monitor a lot closer if we know exactly who to watch for via the signups. And we do have a deadline for the signups, which will be August 31st. We do have the sign-up sheet available on the homepage of the website, and we just need a name and an address and a signature saying, yes, I am using this extra water for watering purposes. And then they just need to drop it off at the utility billing window or in the drop box out front. And then, yeah, that's basically all we need. So we've got the sign-up sheet on the website. We have put in the utility bill that went out in the beginning of the month, notifying the residents that this program is going to be in effect again. You have to annually sign up. this is where you can find the forms. We also have them available at the utility billing office as well. So that is just about all for that little program.
Questions for Melissa? Council? Citizens, questions? Too bad Joan's not here.
I have
Call it the
a
Joan
comment.
Edwards.
This was started a couple of years ago as a pilot program. It's not, strictly speaking, there's no legal basis for it. In other words, we have an ordinance that defines water and sewer rates, and it doesn't make any mention of this. So with your permission, I'd like to come back with an ordinance so I don't go to jail because I gave people discounts on their sewage when it wasn't authorized.
That would be wise.
Mhm.
Sounds good.
And there are forms out on the table
On the
as
table,
well.
good.
There's just a few of them, but.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your new running career. Moving on to the minutes of the April 21st meeting. I have one other announcement. The Little Miami Scenic Trail was named the 2014 Reader's Ballot Best of Ohio Bike Trail. And Governor Kasich actually then sent out a proclamation that we received, and I'm going to leave for Judy to either file or put up somewhere, officially recognizing the Little Miami Scenic Trail as the 2014 Reader's Ballot Best of Ohio Bike Trail. So, I mean, it's pretty exciting that we've got that trail going right through Yellow Springs. So,
I think it would make sense to have it framed and put up
Put out,
somewhere
right.
in our
I agree. Yeah.
in our train station building.
Well, I actually
Property.
have one over there, so.
Oh,
I was
you
gonna-
have one?
I have, yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
that's two, so
Then
maybe.
downstairs somewhere
Yeah.
maybe.
Okay, oh, were there any other announcements? I guess I should have asked, I'm sorry. Announcements from council, citizens? Okay, so now let's actually do the minutes. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4.
There's a typo. Just above reading of resolution 2014-22.
Oh,
and
motion.
Motion is
Mhm.
line right above.
Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. And page 9. Motion for approval?
So,
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Yes, you are. I just saw something on here before I forget it, and I was just noticing it in the minutes, the letter of support about AMP. I hand-delivered a letter to Mike Turner on Friday at a legislative breakfast.
And we also gave one directly to Jared Brown's aide.
And we mailed the one to Portman, so those got out as close to in people's hands as
Yeah.
possible, so I
Thank
think that
you
was a good thing.
for doing that. Appreciate it.
Moving on to a review of the agenda. Anything anybody wants to add or change?
I have two things that really are things that came out of the last meeting that I would just like to find out about.
Okay.
One involves the Fair Acres Road treatment. I just wanted to get clarification about that. And the other, the broadband letter of support and whether that went out.
Okay. What? Oh, that, I can tell you, yes, it went out.
Okay.
I should have probably copied it, and I sent the letter to Dawn. It was electronic, so I'll have that, make sure that gets in the next packet. So can we take that off the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll put the Fair Acres under old business. And so, Lori, do you want to review? I don't think that there were a lot of.
No, we had a letter from Laura Curlis urging the Springfield option for water. We had a letter from Rick Walkie volunteering to be a member on the water panel that we were talking about doing. Those were the main citizen comments. The Jason Hamby one, I don't know if I missed it.
You had it last meeting. It just gets listed this time because it came in somewhat late. It was asking for street car parking for Cemetery Street. And
For
you
the
folks-
cemetery,
And we did
okay,
talk
so
about
it's
that,
not
yeah.
new.
You resolved it last meeting.
Right. So do those normally, now the Laura Curlis one was in our packet, but the Walkie one wasn't, and the Hamby one.
Well, they're
wasn't.
online, so
Well, they weren't in my electronic packet.
they should have all been posted online at the prior meeting, because they were.
Oh, okay. All right.
But
It's
you
a-
didn't,
it's a
they
little-
went online, but you didn't see them until the day of the meeting, so you had asked.
Yeah.
Well, prior that those get listed again in the next packet, so.
Right. Well, I think they should definitely be listed in the petitions and communications,
Mhm.
and probably posted with where they're listed, because otherwise I think, is there another letter that didn't get in the packet that I don't know about?
There's one on your,
Oh, from Bob Vargas?
No.
Right.
She's just saying that's the question.
If I see them in the list here, I'd like to find them in the packet where they're
Right,
listed, as opposed to having them added at the last minute to the last week's packet.
Right, okay.
It's
Yeah,
confusing.
I would agree. And if you don't mind, there's a couple of these things here I would like to say something about. First, in the packet, there was the copy of the Greene County Annual Report to the Community. The reason I pointed out is that a couple of Yellow Springs businesses were awarded. Yellow Springs Brewery received a County Achievers Award, as did YSI Xylem. And actually, Applied Sciences, owned by Max Lake, did too, even though Max, a resident that isn't, unfortunately, that business isn't in Yellow Springs. Boy, do I wish it was. It's in Cedarville. And then Yellow Springs also was noticed for a few growth companies. So if anybody wants to look through the packet, you'll see quite a few mentions of Yellow Springs in the report to the community, which was pretty exciting. And then tomorrow is Election Day. That's probably something we should have announced. I hope you're all going to vote. The Senior Services Levy is on the ballot, affecting Yellow Springs. For those of you in 443, the initiative related to liquor sales in 443 is on the ballot also. And then another one that you may not have heard much about is Issue 1. It is it's to appropriate funds from Ohio to pay bonds. And the bonds are all for infrastructure projects. And it's infrastructure rehabilitation projects. What's actually good about it, it's not a lot of new stretches of roads. It's rehabilitating existing roads and a lot of wastewater treatment plants, water treatment plants. Since, let's see, what are the years here? Since 2001, no, since 1996, Yellow Springs has gotten $1.7 million out of one fund and $461,000 out of another fund. So we're doing, and that's also where we're getting the money for the water line project that's going to happen down at Antioch. We're going to get $400,000 for that. So Issue 1 has been very good to Yellow Springs. No new taxes. Basically, the bond payments are paid out of the general fund. So they're cutting our government, what is it?
Local government.
Local government fund, but they're giving it back in infrastructure, which I think is okay because at least they're recognizing and supporting the building of infrastructure, which is absolutely critical for this state. So please support Issue 1. And that's personal, that's not a council
I mean,
thing.
wait, is this, you said they're giving it back, is this actually adding to what was already there, or is this just not taking away more here?
This has nothing to do with local government fund, but what I'm just saying is that it's money that, they're cutting our money in one place, but then they're making money available in another place.
Yeah, but this has always been available, or it's been
Well,
available since 1996.
Right, 1996, they revote, we revote on it about every 10 years, 10,
Right.
15 years, so.
So I just want to be clear, they're not actually doing anything good for us, except letting us vote on this.
I know.
Right? You know, I'm glad, and I really do want people to vote for it, but they need to do.
They need to do
We need
more.
those funds
Yes.
back.
You're right,
We
you're
need,
right.
we need estate taxes back.
Oh, heck, I mean, we go to meetings and sometimes you think they're gonna take more. Supposedly, Brian and I both attended a legislative breakfast. Rick Perales was there, Chris Widener was there, and at least Rick Perales said that he believes that local government funds are at least stable, at least because some people think they're gonna go more. There are people that want to take more local government funds.
It's ridiculous.
And he said that he doesn't think that there is any appetite at the state for doing that right now. So hopefully not ever.
And since Karen raised or mentioned about the legislative brunch, it was very exciting. We got a shout out for the Yellow Springs schools and our project-based learning from the senator, which was really neat. He had Mario stand up and it
There was a high school student there
Right.
also, so it was, okay, enough about our elected officials from Columbus. We have no public hearings in legislation.
Karen, before we move on, I just wanted to highlight something about the thought bubble letters.
Oh, okay.
Especially to council. I had a meeting, Karen had a separate meeting, and this is a new application that basically maps out locations and is a pretty exciting way, I think, to encourage participation on how to, what's called placemaking, I think is the current lingo. I guess I would encourage anyone on council that's interested to take a look at that, but we have been offered, if we so choose, to be a pilot for that for free. And basically what happens is you put a spot on the map like Ellis Park, and citizens or anyone that wants to can make comments and suggestions, and it's a way to get information that's quite new, and I thought it was pretty interesting. It may also be something that if we have time at our next meeting we want to look at, because they are launching it on June 1st. So, I don't want to go in detail, but just to bring it to everybody's attention. So.
Thanks, Brian. So now is the time for citizens' concerns. If there is anything that anyone would like to bring to council's attention that is not on the agenda, please do so now. State your name and you have 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm Chrissy Cruz. I've been kind of curious all week about something that came up in last council meeting when we were talking about the budget and how we are currently have a deficit in our operating budget. And Mr. Bristol brought up that we had found another $1.5 million in our surplus budget. I've been kind of puzzling all week as to an explanation of how we found that, where that surplus money is coming from, because I'm not a finance person, so I'm just kind of like looking for a better explanation of where that money is. I realize that just because our budget surplus is growing, that doesn't mean that we still need to work on increasing our revenue for our operating budget. But I contacted several communities around here, and the majority of the communities surrounding us are dipping into their surplus budget rather than their surplus budget growing. And the recommendation is that you have 10% annual surplus at least, and Springfield is currently down to 6.3 surplus in their budget. I talked to the finance director in Fairborn, and they're actually going $11 million in the hole this year on their budget. So I'm just puzzling out. For me, I need a better explanation of why, even though we are saying that our revenue is going down and we're not making enough money, on the other hand, it seems like we're really prospering compared to other communities. And certainly 2 years ago, our surplus was $5 million. And at the time, we were talking about how we needed to conserve and get better. And in that time, it grew then to $6 million. And then now we find out last week meeting that it's up to 7.5 million. So I just need some clarification on that. I didn't see anything about it in the packet as far as the minutes of the agenda, any sort of explanation for it or anything, so that's what I have concerns about.
Okay, thanks, Chrissy.
I can't explain it because our finance director quit in the middle of last year. There were several months there where we did not have one. When we finally hired a finance director in December, frankly, the books were a mess. And it took us about 4 months to figure out actually how much money we did have. So I'm grateful that we are reasonably confident now that the number I quoted is correct. How we got from where we were to where we are, I can't tell you. Don't have an answer for that. I do know that before the inheritance tax was abolished by the state, there was 1 year where we got one heck of a big lump of money through the inheritance tax, and my guess is that explains a part of it. But I haven't done an analysis, and I can't tell you why it grew.
So Kent, would it be fair to say that our surplus didn't grow, we just reconciled our books and we know what we have?
No, I think it did grow. I think a year ago, in January of 2013, I think we did have a $6 million balance on the budget, and I do think it's higher now. Why it happened, I can't tell you.
Are we deficit spending in the general fund?
We are, yes. Yeah, we're spending, I believe, $500,000 to $600,000.
So we are dipping into our reserves.
Yeah, we'll be dipping into the reserves.
Could we maybe, I think it would be good, and I'm really glad Chrissy brought this up, I think it would be good for us in the future, and in a soon, one of our next upcoming meetings, to have Melissa come and talk to us about how that shifted. I also asked about it briefly, but we didn't go into details because of so much on our agenda. But it would be good to have a clearer sense of, because not all of it's in general funds, some of it, as I understand, we're in enterprise funds. And so having, I think the electric fund, which has always been one of our more robust funds. And so I would like to have a better sense for exactly how that all panned out.
Right, if she could, and maybe just with all of the changes that we just made, with the last supplemental, getting the capital projects in, maybe it would be good at the next meeting to have a summary. So a summary of where we are with all the capital projects that we just.
Okay.
Yeah, and any analysis that she can help us to see sort of if there's trends, if there's something that she notices looking at, to be able to better answer Chrissy's question.
I think it's a good question.
And I would like to say that I imagine we are better off than a lot of communities in terms of the fact that we do have a nice surplus. And that it is in different funds, and those funds can't just pull money out of the electric fund and put it in the general fund. And that's one reason why I think it makes sense for us to be doing capital projects, to be doing repairs, to be doing the water plant, to be doing things that are one-time kind of thing rather than ongoing operations. And at the same time, we are having a deficit in terms of how much we're bringing in for operations and how much we're spending.
Thanks, Marion. Any other citizens' concerns? Okay. And the Planning Commission annual report will actually happen at the next meeting. I guess that was an agenda change we should have made.
Yeah, you know what? He is actually unable to come to the next meeting, so we're bumping all the way up to June 2nd.
Okay.
At this point.
Now moving on to old business, we have a water sourcing update. I know that Kent that was quite a bit about that in his report, so I will turn that over to Kent, and I think that actually John Eastman was expecting to be here, but I guess he has his own trustee meeting. So, go ahead.
Yeah, based on what happened at the last council meeting, Judy Kempner has created a library online on our webpage of the various reports and analyses and so on that have been done over the last few years about water sources. And so anybody who wants to can access those online and read them. John Eastman and I are working together on a 4-point plan. John, because he's an engineer, is going to do a report on the various benefits and drawbacks of design build versus a more conventional engineering design followed by a competitive bid process. So he's going to talk about that. John and I together are having a meeting 2 weeks from this Thursday, so it's good you're not doing your thing on the 21st, with the stakeholders who have a particular interest in our water supply and quality and distribution and so on. So we're inviting half a dozen or more local enterprises and institutions to come meet with us and tell us what they need.
And you said this is Wednesday, the 21st?
Wednesday, the 21st at 3 p.m.
Okay.
Is that a kind of thing, who would all be invited to that? Is it?
Well, I'm
is it-
inviting Antioch, Friends Care, Xylem, the Allspring Schools.
The brewery.
The brewery. There were one or two others that who have a particular interest in water that we've invited. And I've asked them to suggest anybody else that they would like to include. So.
Will any council members attend that? I obviously
Well, you'll
cannot.
know about it. It's up to you. You're certainly free to join us.
Okay.
Yeah, I would.
Judy, why don't you just go ahead and advertise it as a public meeting in case more than 2 of us show up?
And what time is that, Ken?
3 o'clock on the 21st. Then the other, the remaining part is softening, and I'm going to be taking the lead on researching that, and John is going to help me with the parts when it comes to looking at the relative costs of doing it with a new plan.
Okay.
So, but I'm going to be looking at the health and the policy implications.
Okay. Council, questions, any other comments?
Well, this reminds me about the wellhead protection plan, and maybe the best thing would be for me to, when we get to future agenda items, put that on, because given that we have made a decision that we're going to keep our plant one way or another, I think it also makes sense that we start doing whatever we need to do for the wellhead protection plan.
Excellent. I'm glad you thought of that.
So does it make sense to?
Well, I mean, I feel like it can probably work into a process. I mean, to me, it's part of the process.
Right.
And maybe it's something that probably could wait for the new manager to.
Well, let's make sure that the wellhead protection plan is in this library that you're compiling.
Yes,
Maybe it
that's
already
it.
is.
It isn't. So
Um,
it's somewhere online, but not.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about what Mary Ann was thinking before we say
Yeah.
we're going to put
Well,
it on.
I do actually have a hard copy of the document, but it was so large and daunting that I haven't even opened it. I don't know. But I understand that
It
there's
isn't actually that hard to get through.
There's a woman who was a consultant, Linda Aller.
She's still around.
Who, my understanding is, would probably make sense to be good to contact her, to talk to her about how do we update it and stuff. So.
Yeah, and she actually said she came in about a year ago when we were talking about Springfield, and she actually said we're pretty close. There's some updates that need to be made. That's just the plan, but then we've got to figure out how to implement it. That's the broader issue, because it's primarily a lot of work for staff to develop.
But clearly, if we were to go with a new plant, it would have to be sited differently. I guess the well field would stay in the same place, so that would not change. Would the siting of the plant be impacted by information in the wellhead protection plan at all for any reason? I mean, you've got all those chemicals that have to be kept on site, chlorine, and stuff like that. So I don't know if that,
I think it would
this
be
is
the other
pure
way.
ignorance.
I think it would be the other way around. You figure out where the plan is going and then build a wellhead protection plan around that.
I mean, in my understanding, it's literally going to be feet. I mean, it's not going to be.
Okay.
um,
It's not going to be like half mile.
No, I think
Even
it's.
a quarter mile away.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be, yeah.
A football field away or something.
Ken, I have a question. I thought I understood at the last meeting that there was a small community about our size that had built their own plant and they were using lime softening.
I don't recall that.
I thought John told us. Well,
Yeah.
can you look into that?
Sure.
Just make sure, yeah.
Yeah, because apparently they were able to afford it. So I'm just wondering, because we've always had the perception that we was only one way we could go.
Well, and again, that's why John's going to be part of the
Okay.
piece I'm looking at. In other words, I'm going to be looking at the implications of softening, and the piece that John's going to be helping me with is the costs of the various different processes.
Okay.
And then I think there's also membrane softening. That's
Oh,
another.
yeah, reverse osmosis.
Reverse-
It's very
That's
expensive.
very expensive.
Yeah.
That's what the brewery does.
Yeah, West Carrollton has a reverse osmosis.
Right.
And I think Joe Bates said they wish they didn't.
Okay.
I mean,
West
that it was
Carrollton?
too- Yeah, that it was.
So a lot of maintenance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any comments from citizens?
Me again. I just wanted to ask really quick, Chrissy Cruz again. I was gonna ask about that lime as opposed to the ion softening. I went back through some of my materials from the discussions. Is that the reason why we are not considering lime so far? It's too expensive? That's the reason why okay. I just want to clear that up.
And you have to have space as well
Okay.
for the lime deposits.
It's kind of a big, yeah,
Okay.
thing.
But again, I'd like to hear about it since a real small community was able to do it.
Do they just charge a lot for the water? Do they have an anonymous benefactor?
Next, we have an update on the village manager search process. We have a few of our citizens here, citizen committee here, Bettina, Sue, and Kate, and I appreciate it. They had a busy couple of days, Friday and all day Saturday, and plus all the time before that working up in the planning process. So we really appreciate that participation. Other members, I'll turn it over to Brian. He can tell the other members that are on that committee. And
Yes, yeah. So, well, let me just brief recap of how we started and where we're at. So I think everyone knows that we ended up with 61 applicants, which was very exciting. Comparatively, Vandalia, who was doing their search at the same time, got about 40. So I thought that not only was complimentary to the efforts of our consultant, but also the fact that people want to be in Yellow Springs. We then divided it into 3 tiers, which council approved the top tier of 15 applicants. The citizen committee contributed their thoughts to that as well. And then ultimately, we divided that group into 3 cohorts. And the decision the council made at our last meeting was that we would interview the first cohort of 5. And we were able to bring in pretty much all of the citizens on the committee. And there were 8 that were here along with council, interviewing 2 on Friday, 3 on Saturday. Those interviews went anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. And we also spent a significant amount of time on Saturday afterwards talking about our observations and
talk about.
And right, that's right. And Kent took each of them on a tour before they came for their interview, so they got to see the facilities, and that was also great because Kent had an opportunity in a less structured situation to talk to them and give us some insight. As you can imagine, our interviews with 13 people in the room, actually 14 with Doug, were pretty intense, and I was impressed that all the candidates were able to stand up to the Spanish Inquisition. Was that what Bettina said? And then we started today off with an executive session. Our goal was to figure out from those 5 assuming that we were happy with those of the top 5 candidates, could we narrow the field down to 2 to 3 finalists? And it's already been mentioned in the paper that we are planning for the next piece to have second interviews, to have a public forum, which we have confirmed is going to be on May 22nd at 6:30 p.m. here at the Bryan Center Gym. They will have meetings with staff, a lot of meetings with staff. We are also interested in getting each of these candidates to meet various citizens from different areas. So business owners, folks from the schools, citizens that are interested, and certainly we could talk a little bit about if anyone has ideas tonight or in the future about who would be good to meet to get more personal feedback. There are boxes out right now at Tom's, at the library, and the Senior Center, thank you, where we are trying to collect questions from citizens, and the Citizen Advisory Committee, which is made up of Bettina Solis-Stolzenberg, who was here, Sue Abendroth, Kate Hamilton. Also part of that committee was Judy Kidner, and Corey Johnson, Ryan Pearson,
Christine Beard.
Christine Monroe Beard, and Hannah Delamater. I think I got everybody. All right. So you can certainly approach anyone on the advisory committee, any council members. We're definitely interested in any ways that we can get as much feedback and as much interaction with what we're, I think, proposing is going to be 3 finalists. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that right now. So in terms of the process, anything to add?
No, I think that
Okay.
covered it well.
Since we have some of the citizens here, I don't know if you guys have anything you'd like to comment on. Bettina, Sue, Kate? Yes?
I think that the choice of, oh, sorry.
I hate to make you put down your knitting.
Sue Abendroth. The choice of consultants that you made, I felt was excellent. My impression of the whole process was that he gave very good advice, he gave very good guidance, he did a nice job with the preparation of the various candidates to bring to town or to not bring to town, and I would highly recommend that he be used again by anybody. So there you go.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Yeah.
Bettina Solis-Stolzenberg. I just wanted to also note that at the informal forum that we're going to have on the 22nd, that there will be brochures handed out with bios of the candidates that are selected, and half of that brochure will be intended for input from citizens. So when you meet the candidate, if you have input about a particular candidate in your interaction with them, write it down, and we'll have one of those boxes there to collect that information. So we're coveting citizen input.
And did you want to mention the child care part?
Child care will be available on the 22nd for both the formal and the informal forums.
And there will be food involved?
Yes, refreshments.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that, in terms of structure, we are going to have set questions, and we're going to have each candidate speak and answer those questions individually. So it will not be like the forum that we did for Village Council where everyone was together. We'll bring them one by one. There will be a little bit of time during that, we think, for any questions that people have during the formal part. But as Bettina also mentioned, we wanted to have an informal gathering afterwards so you can ask candidates questions face to face. So there should be plenty of opportunity for any questions that anyone wants to ask, either during the formal piece or the informal piece. And I'm guessing the applicants will stay as long as they have questions. So, what's that, Kim?
Until the food runs out.
There you go. We'll have plenty of food.
When will we find out the finalists?
The finalists, we can find out right now.
Yeah, I think,
Do you want to go ahead and announce, or do you want me to? As Brian said, we had a good list. The 3 finalists that we will be bringing in, Patty Bates, she is currently the village administrator for the village of Williamsburg, Ohio. We will be bringing in David Elmer, who is former township administrator for Pierce Township, Ohio, and he was also a village administrator in Moscow, Ohio. And we will also be bringing in Robert Kellogg, who was the former town manager in Sewell's Point, Florida, and previous to that, and probably a little bit closer to Yellow Springs, is Rittman, Ohio, which is in northeast Ohio. So those are the 3 candidates. There was a strong agreement on all 3 from citizens and council, and Kent and our consultant. So it felt like a very well discussed and good decision that was made to bring in those 3.
Yeah, one thing that was, I think, really great about the weekend with the first round of interviews is we had plenty of time for council and the Citizen Advisory Committee to ask follow-up questions. And that's why some of the interviews went for a couple hours. But there was a lot of follow-up and feedback on that, and then we did have an opportunity to basically discuss the candidates right after we had met all 5, as well as upon reflection this evening before we started our public meeting.
Questions?
So it's going to be a meet? Okay.
Sorry.
Hi. So there's going to be another committee, you're saying? I missed part here, where people can participate?
Yes.
Okay.
So
not the forum. I'm not talking about the
right.
forum.
Yeah. We are also very interested in thinking about how to structure the 2 to possibly 3 days that the finalists will be here. So, we're thinking about things like I mentioned. I think they should all tour the YS schools and meet Mario and our principals and our students, for that matter. I think it would be great for them to meet business owners. I think it would be great for them to meet citizens that are interested. And so what we would all like to hear are any ideas, again, either tonight or in the future, about how we can maximize their time and their interaction when they're here. They'll spend a lot of time meeting staff, and we will also be doing second interviews as a full council. It's going to be pretty intensive for them, but I think that's an important way that we'll be able to measure if they're really going to be a good fit for Yellow Springs.
But to answer your question, no, we're not going to form another committee.
Okay. And I think that there will be, or there already is going to be a press release in the paper, so there'll be information in the paper probably for the next 2 weeks with details about the forum.
Can I confirm that with you, or should I catch a full paper?
We're doing an article about it.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
And Diane, I've got the press release and all of that sort of things if you want to call tomorrow.
Okay. So Mary Ann indicated she wanted to talk about, kind of get an update and just review what the discussion was in the Fair Acres project from the last meeting. So, Mimi, would you talk about what staff's plans are for Fair Acres for 2014?
We budgeted money for what I call a cape seal for the Fair Acre streets, which would even out the surface and give them a smooth riding surface that would last 5 to 8 years. And as I understood it, based on the give and take at the last meeting, now we are going to resurface. In other words, put a couple of inches of new asphalt over the whole thing. It costs a little more, but we can juggle our plans for the year in a way that can make that happen. The cost difference between the 2 options is something like $25,000, so it's not a big change. So that's our plan, is to do an overlay on all of the Fair Acre streets. except Fair Acres Drive itself, which was repaid last year.
And so the time period that this new overlay would last, I mean, you and I had a discussion, I just thought it was important to make it public so
Yes.
that the residents understand.
Yeah, an overlay, if it's cared for, could be as long as 20 years.
Oh.
And so we're deferring discussion on the utilities underlying the streets. So
We're deferring it, and there is no plan at this point for having a conversation with the residents about the utilities
Not unless you
or
want to.
even projecting when that work would be done. Is that right?
Unless you say otherwise.
I didn't know that we had authorized or indicated that we wanted more than just the KVCO. That wasn't what I understood we had done at the last meeting. I think I was thinking more that we would do, I mean, but if it's only 25,000, out of what total budget? Or out of what, like, total?
Well, the difference is 80,000 versus 105. And
For just that area?
yes, right. And I believe we have something like 300,000 budgeted for road work. I have to go back and look at the budget.
I mean, I think that the thing that changes probably by doing the more expensive thing is that rather than saying, okay, we're going to deal with the water and sewer lines within the foreseeable future of several years, now the implication is, okay, we're not going to deal with it for maybe 10 or 15 years.
Yes.
And
I didn't.
is that what we want?
I had no sense that that was what we had made that kind of a decision.
Well, I wasn't realizing we were talking about that kind of a time frame. But I think it's a bigger discussion, because I think that there is more involved than just replacing water lines. I think a bigger issue that's going to have impact on the citizens, on the residents there, are the laterals, because all of the laterals from the houses to the street are going to have to be lowered. That's going to be significant. So somebody's going to have to pay for that. So no matter what, even if the village decides that we're going to pay for the infrastructure in the street, somebody else has to pay. The homeowner's going to have to pay for the laterals. And so I think that there is some, I guess I would like to, we've been kind of talking in generalities about this project. I don't know that we've gotten specifically enough into it. I don't know if there is a small engineering study we could do to look at the situation with the laterals, how much they would have to be lowered, and we could start to put an estimate to what that would be. I think we've been talking in terms of the whole project, water and sewer being around $800,000 is my recollection.
Right.
I guess it's just, is this something that we want the village government to deal with within the next 5 years? Or do we want to say, oh, let's just put it off for 10 or 15 years?
I don't think it's something we want to kick down the road 5 to 10 years. I think if we start getting the abundance of water breaks, again, because by putting that few inches, making the streets nice and smooth is not going to alleviate the problem of water breaks. So, I think it's a discussion that we should have. Because
Jerry.
I've been over there and I've looked, and in the past we did do a decent job of making the streets smooth and so forth, and there were I counted 15 water breaks. And the way that area was constructed, you could find yourself repairing a bunch of water breaks again. Now, someone could argue, is it cheaper to go ahead and repair the water breaks versus, lowering the water line, changing the sewer line? That's again a discussion that I think should be all melded into that.
But that's why we have to have more information.
Right.
We have to understand what is really involved.
I don't want
in
to
the whole
kick it,
project.
I don't want to kick it 20 years down the road. I think we need to deal with it. It's hard, the 80K versus 105K and 24% difference. So, I feel like this is really new and kind of big information that I haven't had a chance to mull over because I didn't understand that was what I thought we had already decided. Cape Seal,
Yeah.
80K, we're going to do that as a temporary thing so that we could really take some time and focus on it in the next few years and really get a good solution that we actually decided on rather than just kind of trying to pretend it doesn't exist and hoping that it doesn't keep causing us huge problems.
Well, maybe we take that money and turn it into, spend it on some engineering. I mean, we're not going to get final engineering for that. The final engineering is going to be a lot more money than that, but maybe we could at least get some preliminary engineering information about the number of laterals that need to be changed, the depth that those need to go down, some estimates on what all that's going to mean, what the repercussions of the whole project is going to mean to the village and to the neighborhood, to the homeowners. Is that something, I mean, is that something Mike Hines could do?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So we're directing.
Well, what do you, I wanted to hear what you all
Well,
have to say.
this came out, I mean, some residents, I mean, I was impressed that a number of residents came to our last meeting, and then when I was meeting with Kent, I guess it was actually about Ellis Park, he and I talked about what he was planning to do, and at that point, the idea of, well, this is going to push this up, and potentially 10 to 20 years, I just wanted to make sure, is that what we're saying, and, you know.
Yeah, it's
the
possible I
residents know.
misinterpreted, but I thought what came out of our meeting when the residents were here was, yes, we're going to fix your roads, and we're not going to do it halfway, we're going to do it right. That's what I got out of it. Maybe I misinterpreted the conversation.
Oh, I mostly wanted to have things clarified, which they are, I think. And now it seems like we're directing Kent to.
Well, I'd like to, what do you think about the two
Well,
options? Do you have a feeling one way or another?
I mean, in a way, you know, it's sort of nice to just say, oh, let someone else deal with it. I mean, that happens. But truly, it seems like that's probably not the best thing to do. Probably the best thing to do is what we're saying is to say, no, we're going to deal with this within 3 to 5 years. Have it finished, have it completed within 5 years, say.
Be good.
I mean, you know, we have things lining up, and the water plant, I would say, is the first priority. Not that they're, well, they're both water, they're not exactly.
They have nothing to do with each other.
They don't come out of the same.
Yeah, they do.
They do.
They come out of the same funds.
They
So the water plant, I think, is the priority that we need to be pushing. But
Right.
I don't think we want to just drop the Fair Acres thing off for people
20 years from now.
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing we heard from the citizens was that it did seem really important to them that if we are going to do something with the roads, that we do something that is a somewhat permanent fix. I mean, again, it's short term. But that seemed to be a priority. And I do remember hearing several folks mention that maybe the water main breaks haven't been so serious. I don't know about that myself, but that was some of the conjecture. I was approached by a few of the folks in the neighborhood, and they did ask if Jason or yourself could come out and explain what was going to happen with the streets, if we reach that conclusion. And I think then they would probably like to follow up once they have a more concrete understanding with us about their thoughts. So I guess in those terms, either explaining what the Cape Seal is going to mean and what that's going to do for a couple years, that was something that they would like to have someone explain a little bit more.
I think another thing that is going to impact the residents a lot is how it gets paid for. And that's something that council is going to have to decide.
Well, it sounds like there are a huge number of problems with that neighborhood, that there are stormwater problems with that neighborhood, there are flooding problems, and unfortunately, most of that, none of that is the village's fault, except the fact that the village government allowed it to be installed incorrectly in the first place. So that is a problem. The developer did a bad job, and the village allowed that to happen. Would the homeowners would have had to have paid more if it had been done correctly in the first place. The homeowners would have had to pay more for their houses to start.
Yeah.
So at some points, the homeowners would have paid for it. But I think what I have a feeling of in that neighborhood, because they were getting flooding, part of the detention pond that was done on King at Glass Farm was to alleviate the flooding that was coming into that creek. So they've got lots of problems in that neighborhood. I'm not an engineer, I don't understand it, but so I'm just feeling like, we say, okay, we're gonna spend $750,000 to replace the water and sewer lines. I'm afraid that's going to grow to $1 million, 1.2 million, when we start to get all these other things. So I think we need to understand the full extent of the problem, and we need to understand, at some point there are issues that are going to have to be handled by the homeowner, and some that the village will have to handle. And I feel like I would like to have a handle on what all of those numbers and issues are before we start to make too many promises about exactly what we're doing in a time frame in which we're doing it. And I would be satisfied
Are you saying, or
with...
do the Cape Seal and spend some money on engineering, or are you?
That's what I would, yeah. I think, and again, I don't know if it needs to be, if it's actual engineering, if it's...
Oh, it has to be civil engineer.
But we're not talking about construction documents.
No.
We're talking about...
We're talking about a plan.
Right.
Assessing the situation.
Assessing the situation and a plan.
I'd like to, I guess, get a better understanding of what the 80,000 versus 105,000 solutions are, and have someone talk to the residents so that they understand that, and then look at it at our meeting. Because I think that, I think the engineering piece will probably stretch out for a while, and I don't think we should miss the schedule to do something about the streets this spring or summer.
Oh, absolutely.
So.
Oh, yeah. That's just a question of what we do.
Right.
Right. Do we have dithering time? That's my question. Do we have time to dither about 80 versus 105, or do we really,
Yes,
how?
you have time, you have a month.
A month?
Yeah.
That's when Greene County's
Well,
coming in?
I don't know when they're going to, but I'm saying that at least a month.
Well, we've already
So-
kind of put in our order. It would just be
Right.
an order.
Just, we can change it, yeah.
Tweaking
Well,
as
instead of
opposed
going
to-
here, go there.
But
Yeah.
if we're saying we're gonna take this on and handle it, and when I say 3 to 5 years, I'm not like, this is in stone, but that means we're putting it on the track, the railroad, whatever you wanna call that, as opposed to just saying someone else can deal with it. Then the cheaper solution that Kent was originally gonna do, it will last that amount of time.
Sure.
So I don't know that it makes sense to, and I think it does, I think it makes sense to spend that extra money into studying the situation and getting a handle on what needs to happen, and what the options are, rather than putting more money into putting down a street that's gonna have water breaks every year and gonna be torn up in, say, 3 years, and
Well, maybe just one thing that I would like to, I hear what you're saying, that was where I was originally, but I'm also kind of with Brian and wanting to know, so if you start, because what's going to happen is we'll probably have another cold winter in the next 3 to 5 years, and you're going to have a lot of, you're going to have a lot of the heaving, and you're going to also probably have water breaks that are happening, and
Well, now,
like,
we had a cold winter this year, and I don't think we had any breaks in Fair Acres.
huh.
Just the one at the end of Northwood and Polecat.
One at Polecat, yeah.
Oh, is that one?
In
that's
terms
slowed down?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Cape Seal, it lasts less because it's just kind of a
It's thinner.
a
There's
thin
less of it,
little
yeah, right,
thing over the top.
right. Yeah, it seals cracks, it fills in some of the irregularities. prevents the pavement from deteriorating further from water seeping in through cracks.
Is it those little rocks? It's the chip seal? No,
Well,
it's,
Cape seal is a two-piece. It's a chip seal followed by a slurry seal. And slurry seal gives you a pretty hard, pretty smooth surface. Chip seal is pretty rough.
yeah, I live on it.
And you get a lot of stone kick off.
Yes.
Okay.
My
So-
husband has been.
So capes, when you put a second layer over the top, that smooths it out and seals the stone. So you get all the stray stones.
Jerry, what do you think?
If I were a resident of that area, I'd like a nice smooth surface. To me, another 20,000 to give them a smooth surface, I don't think that's out. Percentage-wise, to the 80, it's high, but, you know,
In relation to the rest of the.
but in relationship to the rest of the community, I just think it would be 20,000 well spent.
And you know what usually happens is we almost always end up coming in actually lower on our asphalt bid than we budgeted. We have been in the past few years. Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan Reyes. I was thinking to offer a reminder, and I believe would be a fair recap of what some of the residents raised last time for that neighborhood in Embry, which it seemed to me was a concern about if there was a suitable base for a seal solution to work on top of. And it seemed to me, in having walked around that neighborhood a bit, that's probably true to differing degrees in different parts. There are some parts where indeed the base is pretty broken up, and a seal on top of either cold patch or broken up base will only be as good as what's underneath of it. And I guess the other maybe related question would be a clarification, asking about what Kent has been proposing as the two solutions. Well, at least one of them. I understand the seal is pretty much working with what you have there and getting a smooth surface over top. I would guess, just from understanding a bit of the conventions with road repair, that probably base repair would be part of the real solution for this, or base repair and some amount of milling. I'm not sure if you budgeted that.
Can't mill it, there's not enough there.
Yeah, and you can't reseal if there's not enough there, or you can't repave if there's not a good base. So it might be a problem that's a bit more complicated to come up with a good solution in the terms that those neighbors were imagining. If they were imagining indeed a stable road surface, somewhat resembling what they would have gotten when they came, if they were older residents. But I guess that would be, I did at least want to bring up that point that I believe they were making, which I think was a correct one, that resealing some of the very badly broken parts of the road may not be a productive thing itself if there's not a remedial repair beneath that.
Thank you. Paul, did you?
Paul Evandross. I'm not a resident or a civil engineer, but I drive through the neighborhood. Kent mentioned two approaches to the surface. One is to put this slurry on top, the other. In other areas of the village, you've milled, that is, you've taken off most of the pavement that's there and put in new. The pavement there is about 3 inches above the curb now. It's been topped so many times that the pavement is going off into the yards. So there's lots of material there that should probably be milled down and a new surface put over there. Jerry has looked at the number of holes in the street, and there's quite a few, but it's been 50 years since that street's been built. So with once a year or whatever, maybe the...
Sorry.
That wasn't mine.
No.
Maybe you can live with occasional water break. Maybe they're being repaired. Maybe the situations are fixed for the repairs and not recurring. So it's really two issues. One is, do you do the sewer and water blasting, or do you do just the street surface? And if you do the street surface, I would say go down to the original height. That would solve one of the flooding problems where the artesian well is running down the street. At least it would run down the curb rather than down the pavement.
So there isn't, going back to Paul's, there really isn't anything to mill, is that what you're saying?
I've been told that they don't think there's enough pavement depth there to make it to mill, but you're saying otherwise.
I mean, maybe on the sides, and I don't know if you can partially,
Yeah.
I don't know if you can take a miller down, or just down the curbs,
Yeah, you can take.
maybe. So, I mean, it sounds like somebody, that needs to be looked at, so maybe you can bring something back to the next meeting, some kind of a recommendation.
Yeah, and I had two citizens that said they would like to be, kind of walk the streets with someone, and they take the lead to inform other residents, so.
Is there some way we can notify the neighborhood of this discussion or what's happening? Because I think part of what's gone on is people have felt we haven't been paying attention. So I don't know.
Especially since it wasn't on the agenda.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, how difficult is it to send out a notice to everyone in the neighborhood? Is that?
No, we would handle it, we would stick them in the door.
Oh.
Or I actually have an address map, I could come up with street addresses and mail.
I mean, what do you think about sending a letter to the neighbors saying something like, we hear you, we understand that there are several issues, we're trying to figure out how to handle both the street and the water and sewer issue. We're in the process of doing this, and we plan on at least, presumably, we'll be doing something with the streets this year.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've said that. I think that's been in the paper, that's been in the minutes. I think we've said that. I'd rather what you ask for, if Kent's going to go there, if Jason, if maybe Jerry and Brian can be along, that could be noticed and neighbors could know, hey, folks from the village are going to be here such and such a day if you want to come and interact. I don't think we know enough yet. I mean, honestly, I think
You mean send them something that says just what you said?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't think we know
communication.
enough
Yes.
yet to tell them what we're going to do.
We do have to direct Kent about the Cape Seal versus the Moore.
I don't think we do yet. I mean, we
Okay.
can. I think we can. I think we have time. What I'd like him to do is to look at the street, look at this issue with the sides and the fact that it's too high. Can we mill down part of it? Because I think what Paul is saying is that if we add another 2 inches of concrete, and Dan Kerrigan said that last week, if we add another 2 inches of concrete,
You're over the curve.
yeah, so I think that has to be addressed.
And just let me know, Kent, when Jason gets back, when you want to.
They'll be back tomorrow.
Okay.
And I'll forward the email that I received, because they proposed some dates, if
Okay.
possible.
Great, thank you.
And maybe if you could have Jason check with Greene County and see, usually we're later, much later in the summer on the
Yeah,
schedule.
Yes, we are, yeah.
So next on the agenda is a discussion regarding using the Port Authority for development projects. I'm going to turn this over to Brian also. I see that Pete Williams is here from Greene County. Brian and I have both had an opportunity to be at meetings where Pete was discussing the Greene County Port Authority and how it could be used for the Center for Business and Education and also for other projects. You know, I think specifically the first discussion was about the Center for Business and Education. Greene County does have a port authority, and we've also talked to the Warren County Port Authority. So,
Right.
Brian, I don't know if you have any other things to say.
Yeah, I think Karen pretty much covered it, but you know, we realized after the meetings that we had with Warren County, and also Pete was involved in that, that it made a lot of sense for all of council to hear that information directly, because there are a lot of really great things that you can do to promote economic development, to do different kinds of funding and things by using a port authority. And you know, we discovered in that process that Greene County has revived its port authority, and that's why we invited Pete Williams to come. So I think I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me tonight, Council, and Mr. Bristol. I have some information here that Pete Williams, 65 Green Street, Xenia, Ohio, 45385, from the Greene County Department of Development. Last month, I did it at the very end. Should have done it at the beginning. So thank you for having me this evening. I have some documentation that I was going to leave with Mr. Bristol to distribute to the council. It's been a very informative process that I've gone through with the Department of Development and the Greene County Board of County Commissioners, as the Greene County Port Authority has been revamped a bit in the last few months. So I'll leave this with Mr. Bristol tonight, and he can distribute it. And I'm also happy to give you electronic copies of this. What I'm going to leave is an overview of the duties and responsibilities of a Port Authority and a CIC. It's kind of a side-by-side comparison. Greene County has a CIC as well, and I know that Brian had mentioned that you guys will be discussing a CIC later on tonight. I think it's very informative to know which body can do what and which body cannot do what. And then also, we have some very good friends from the law firm Bricker and Eckler, including Shannon Martin, who many of you may know from the Green Giving Foundation, who's done an enormous amount of help, an enormous amount of work for us, helping us kind of revamp our port. And this just kind of goes over, again, kind of a PowerPoint form where the port can do what it can't do. So I'll leave this with you guys tonight. I'm happy to provide that electronically as well. The discussion that we've had relative to a port authority and what it can do for a project like the Center for Business and Education basically comes down to the ability for government financing to operate with much better efficiency and much better speed. Some very simple things that a port can do right off the bat that make it very enticing to people on the development side of the coin are allowing for things as basic as the construction costs and facility costs for new buildings, new construction, to be sales tax exempt for any building materials purchased in the state of Ohio. So very simple formula. If someone comes to us and says that I'm going to put a $2 million building on the property at CBE, I want to use the Greene County Port for that. Just by using the Greene County Port, no obligation, no commitments needed, the developer, the end user, will save, in theory, 6.5% on the sales, the 6.5% sales tax, what they spent on the building materials. So if there's $2 million worth of building materials that go into that building, there's $130,000 saved on the project right off the bat. And again, there's no commitment really needed. The Port Authority won't require X amount of jobs, X amount of investment. Just by using us as a conduit, those savings are realized right away. So as you can see, the larger a project might get, the more savings can be brought to the table. There's two benefits from that. Obviously, the developer's benefit is there's $100,000 plus put back into the pro forma for the budget of the project. They can use it in other areas if they want to. And also, we guarantee, we being the government, guarantee that those materials are bought in the state of Ohio, which is a benefit to our state economy. And what we found in conversation with developers is that they know how to work those certificates, those sales tax exemption certificates, to make sure that as many of those materials as possible are purchased in the state. So that gives them more incentive to buy locally. So that's a very easy benefit that the port brings right away that really no other government entity can provide. Other benefits, obviously, the port issues bonds, that's how it's funded. Those bonds are sales exempt, or those bonds are tax exempt, which makes them more attractive on the open market, which is where they're sold. And I think that maybe that aspect of it hasn't been as popular in the last handful of years because commercial lending interest rates have been so low. But I think eventually when that pendulum goes back in the other direction, the interest rates that port authorities can offer, which are very low, will be able to be much more competitive and enticing than you might get at a local lending institution. Now, the port authority's goal is not to supplant your local lending partner, and I always try to tell folks that if they're in the business world, that we don't want to replace your bank, we don't want to replace your credit union, we don't want to replace your lender, but the port can bring different tools to the equation that can make a deal much more feasible. Since the port is a quasi-governmental body, it's a board appointed by the county commissioners, set up under Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 4285. They have the power to enter into contracts. They have the power of confidentiality. When we have a large site like CBE, and we might have some national interest or some large statewide companies that have interest, but they don't necessarily want everyone to know that they have an interest in that site, a port would have the power of confidentiality throughout those negotiations. And that's important to a lot of people on the business side. So that's another benefit that the port can bring. Additionally, a port has the ability to, as I said, enter into contracts. That's where I go back to the operating at the efficiency of industry. A port doesn't necessarily have to go through a lot of the time involved that local government might have to when they're going through a bid process, when they're going through a public hearing process. If a port is lead on a project, they could hire an architect as opposed to going out for bid. They can hire a construction crew as opposed to going out for bid. A port can be the lead on a special assessment district or a TIF district for a large piece of property and bonding that future earnings off and financing the front end of the deal. Another thing that a port can do, and if I'm going too fast, just tell me to slow down or raise your hand if you have questions. Another thing the port can do that's very enticing to the business side of things, that they can offer what's called a synthetic lease. So a port could take title to a property. So the port could take title to CBE, and they could find a developer, they could find an end user that's interested to help that company's balance sheet, to make them more attractive to a lending institution, or make it more attractive, make it easier for them to gain capital to operate. They can do a deferred ownership option where an end user might lease that piece of land from the port for 5, 10, 15 years for $1, under the agreement that they'll purchase it at the end of that term, allowing a lot more capital in the beginning to be freed up, making it a lot easier for that company to operate. So those synthetic lease options are something that a port can do that a CIC can't offer, and a local government doesn't have the ability and the nimbleness to offer the way they're set up. So I've thrown a lot at you. I've tried to relate it back to how it would tie into specifically the CBE option. I think that there's a lot of excitement from my end on what could be done with our port revamped, and again, I think that I've gotten a lot of optimistic feedback, not only from my partners in the economic development realm, whether they're people like Karen here in the village with the chamber, my friends in Fairborn, Xenia, and Beaver Creek, but also in the development community as well, who have said it would be great if we could use this more often to get these benefits here in the county, bring business here. So with that being said, there's a lot of literature here as well to share that I'm happy to leave with you guys to digest. And then, Brian, do you have any other things you'd like me to touch on?
Oh, I have a couple
Yes, ma'am.
questions. The synthetic lease.
Yes.
It sounds sort of like land contract, sort of.
In a way, the way it's structured, kind of like a land contract, but at the same time, the port and the end user are really partners throughout. So the port will always be present in a synthetic lease, not necessarily, in my mind, when I think of a land contract, I think of maybe more of an absentee landlord that's trying to get rid of a property. This is a partner who's trying to make the end user as successful as they possibly can by making sure that the occupation of that land doesn't show up on a balance sheet when you go to your bank for a line of credit, when you go to your bank for more lending. So the company's internal financing looks stronger on paper through the synthetic lease. And the port's saying, we'll let you have it, we'll give you this 30 acres for $1 a year for 10 years. At the end of that 10 years, we'll have a pre-negotiated sales price that we both agree to. I'm doing this, meaning Port, I'm doing this because I want you, the company, to have every advantage you can have to be successful. So when you go to the bank for a line of credit, they're not going to see this large rent payment showing up. They're not going to see this large debt service showing up for the land, because I'm trying to help you become more successful. At the end of that pre-negotiated term, we'll settle up, but for that period of time, you'll have the benefit of this synthetic lease to get the company as strong as you can.
So if you were working with the Greene County Port,
Yes.
let's say either we had our own CIC, a new designated CIC, or Community Resources, whoever, this would be a collaborative venture?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things about ports that I think is very exciting for me is that they really promote collaboration. They really promote regionalism in the sense that not only regionalism on a local level between maybe the county and the village CIC, but also the Greene County Port can collaborate with other ports for larger revenue funds that they might have. So the Greater Cincinnati Port has a very large revenue bond fund that we could tap into to get the best interest rate possible, that we would bring back to the village and say, here's what we can get through our collaboration with another port. And then again, everything works here under a collaborative model. And it's not necessarily the port going it alone, or the village going it alone, or the county going it alone. There's a lot of players at the table. Another great thing about the port is that they can also, as I said, they can enter into contracts. They can also go after grants and state programs. So the port could be the lead applicant on a brownfield remediation grant opportunity. So the port could get some grant money through the Clean Ohio Fund. So could the village. So could the county. We could have 3 different entities all going to get a share of grant funding from the same, for the same property under different names. That's another great thing about the port, is that you have this kind of multifaceted attack that we can bring to the table because of the way the port's set up under ORC. So synthetic leases they're not the easiest thing to explain. They're not the easiest thing to grasp. Land contract is, in a basic model, it is kind of set up that way. But I would also stress, when I think of land contracts, having done code enforcement for a number of years, I would always think of absentee landlords. In a synthetic lease, the port is a partner at every step, along with everyone else who's at the table. Whether that's the village, the county, everyone else at the table.
Pete, could you clarify on the sales tax abatement?
Yes.
Because this is the first time I've heard the word Ohio. So does that simply mean, because there aren't a lot of building materials made, there are a lot of building materials not made in Ohio, let's say. Is that so they would just have to go through a distributor?
Yes.
An Ohio distributor?
Yes.
I mean, at some point, somebody in Ohio would have to...
Yeah, so basically, the developer is given a certificate. It's a sales tax certificate issued by the Greene County Port. That certificate is something the developer will use when they purchase...
it's like a tax exempt certificate anybody has, right? That's what you're saying?
Yes, that the port can issue for costs associated with the building and with the manufacturing materials associated therein with. And the developers I've talked to have said, we know how to work these because we want to get as much of a benefit out of it as we can. And then on our side, the county, we're happy because we know that these things are then bought locally. And there's some things where the county specifically will benefit immensely, because I always think about Phillips. Phillips Concrete in Beaver Creek Township, Xenia Township, kind of on the border there. They do an enormous amount of excavating and concrete work that ties right into a lot of building materials and a lot of building things that go on. And I think that would be great for our local economy, because companies like that become more and more attractive when you have that 6.5% forgiveness on the construction costs. Mm-hmm. And some of the scenarios that I've run in my mind talking to developers about this, there was an $11 million building that went up in Beaver Creek, and just chatting with the developer, what if we would have had this exemption for that? That's almost $700,000 back into their pocket had we been more aggressively using the program at the time. So now the sales tax exemption can be pre-negotiated as well. Maybe for some projects we don't want to do the full 6.5% exemption. Maybe we want to do 5%. Maybe we want to do a larger percent for things that are purchased directly in Greene County to entice people to purchase more here, because you can save more here. Those are all things that can be negotiated at the beginning of a deal between the Port Authority Board and the end user and all the partners at the table.
Any other questions? Questions from citizens? And the next topic on the agenda is the, talking about CICs, and I'm hoping you can stay for that a few minutes. I mean,
Sure.
Greene County is our designated
Yes.
CIC at this point, so I
And
think.
I'm the
it-
secretary treasurer of that CIC.
Well, great.
I'll answer what I can.
So, yeah, if you would, I
Yeah.
think that Mary Ann and Jerry are going to be talking, taking that discussion, lead on that discussion, but if you could just hang on and
Yeah.
and add anything or answer any questions you might be able to.
Yeah.
So we'll move on now to the CIC discussion.
So I think for a couple years, council has discussed the possibility of having a designated CIC, a designated Community Improvement Corporation. Community Resources is a Community Improvement Corporation, but it doesn't have any formal ties with the village government, and it certainly has no oversight with the village government. Whereas a designated CIC would have a percentage of the people on that board be appointed by the village government and presumably also by the Miami Township trustees and John Stevens. So if we're thinking about it, we're probably thinking about something that involves the village and the township. So it seems like there would be a number of reasons for having a designated CIC so that that board, that organization would probably be the economic development driver for the village, at least for the village government. And so Jerry and I got together and developed a list of questions, and there could be more questions, things that we would want to investigate before determining whether we want to go forward with having a designated CIC. And I'm not going to go over all of the questions, but I don't know if citizens got this, but Brian Springer, who is no longer a resident of Yellow Spring, had sent this to the village in 2006, I think. It's a little article that talks about designated CICs, and I think it gives a nice overview of what they can do. So one of the things that we would do would be, and Jerry and I have done it a little bit, like how are other small communities using this kind of organization, and is it being successful? Clearly a critical question would be, what would the role of community resources be vis-a-vis this new group? And an option would be that community resources could morph into a designated CIC, but this is something that both organizations, the village government, well, all three, village government, the Miami Township trustees, and community resources will need to decide. And I think another critical question is, if we were going to do this, do we want to put the energy, human resources, and financial resources into supporting such an organization? Because probably there'd be some staff time at the village, and I don't know about the township, would want to put into this organization as opposed to having it be an all-volunteer board. That makes it difficult, I think, to function when it's all volunteer. And there are some other questions that we wrote down, but including, for example, would we want the designated CIC to take over the development of the Glass Farm? Would we want them to take over the development of the Dayton Street? Would we want them to have a broad mission that might include developing an incubator, taking over the revolving loan fund, which is probably one thing they would do. That's one thing that they tend to do. And then clearly the Center for Business and Education would be presumably a major project, assuming that moves forward, that would do. So we've written down these questions. We're suggesting that an advisory task force be formed to address these questions and other questions and come back with some recommendations to village council and community resources and the township. And a suggested timeline that the task force be created in May and make its recommendation by the end of the year. And so I think I'll stop now and see if council has questions, opinions, whatever.
I'd be interested in hearing from Pete, do you have examples of what CICs are doing in other communities in Greene County?
And for that matter, what, the Greene County CIC?
Well, the Greene County CIC has a pretty broad mission statement. That's to essentially enhance the health, safety, welfare, and economy of Greene County. That can mean a lot of things. We also have a code of regulations that was adopted, I believe, about 40 years ago by the CIC that really kind of breaks that down a little bit and defines it better. And both of those I'm happy to share those with you if you'd like to see those by way of example of what our CIC does. Our CIC has 10 members. By charter of the CIC, they have to have a certain percentage of the members at all times be county elected officials. So all three of our county commissioners sit on our CIC. That is by way of our charter. So the wishes of the commissioners are always present there. Our CIC has, in the past, funded a revolving loan fund. We have paid for marketing programs. We've paid for studies. What I would kind of best describe the Greene County CIC is doing is supplementing and enhancing the development efforts of the county and our surrounding municipalities, villages, and townships. I know Fairborn has recently incorporated a development corporation, which is a little bit different than a CIC. CIC is nonprofit. So Community Improvement Corporation is nonprofit, Development Corporation is for-profit. Both of them have similar missions. I think Fairborn's is by design a little bit more aggressive. And Chris Wimsett, the development director there, has done that to go out and get business. So the Greene County CIC, I think the best way to put it is it enhances the development efforts of the county, specifically my department. And by way of that, we have funded the revolving loan fund in the past. Industrial revenue bonds that are issued by the county, which were much more prevalent in the 80s and 90s for shopping malls and things like that. The Greene County CIC would be the statutory agent on those bonds at the beginning, and they'd receive a percentage of those bonds when they're issued. Those aren't as prevalent today as they were in 20 and 15 years ago. But I think the CIC right now kind of serves as a guide for the county department of development on our long-term strategic initiatives, goals, and benchmarks. So the county CIC does a 3- and 5-year plan for the economic forecast, the economic plan that my department objectives get set by, and we work, the CIC kind of in conjunction with my department works closely with all the Greene County municipalities, villages, and townships, and the state of Ohio. So I don't know if that really answered your question as much as you'd like it to, but I think the best way to describe our CIC is it supports the staff in place, whether it's on the community development side, doing our grant funding, or the economic development side, which is really more my wheelhouse, and all the partners that I have at the table.
And are there other communities in Greene County that have CICs?
Other than Fairborn's, I believe that the county CIC is the only one that I'm aware of.
Okay. And I think Xenia basically kind of shut down. They had a CIC that they basically shut down. And
well,
that staff is now with a city employee, right?
Yeah, that was what Steve used to work for.
Right.
That was all funded by a TIF after the tornado. And when the TIF funding ended, it might have been a 30-year TIF.
Mm-hmm.
So the Xenia Economic, XEGC I think it was called,
Mm-hmm.
Xenia Economic Enhancement Group.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably saying it wrong. But the current director of development for the city of Xenia, Steve Brodsky, he used to be a member of a CIC that the city of Xenia ran, but that was all funded by a tax increment financing district that was set up after the 1974 tornado.
Oh.
That was a very long-term TIF. When the TIF finally ran out, after I think 30 years, which was maybe 2000, it might have been a little bit after that, I think it was around 2008. I think that, well, the tip wasn't set up right after the tornado, but maybe a couple of years after. So Steve and his staff, which I think was maybe 1 or 2 people, they just became city employees. So the city kind of reabsorbed that function back in-house.
Okay.
But when the Xenia CIC was set up, they basically worked in support of the city of Xenia's economic development efforts, providing staff people, providing direction, and I think the board is important because the board aren't necessarily elected officials, and they provide insight that don't come from a politician. You know, you can get a broad spectrum of viewpoints across many industries, many backgrounds, and that's what I really enjoy about the CIC that I serve on, is that we have a very good, diverse, I think, both geographically by the county map and industry-wise, of folks who bring much different viewpoints to the table when we're looking at some of these larger issues.
Okay, thanks. I guess one other question, John, you're here representing, I know you're not actually here representing the township trustees, but being a township trustee, do you have thoughts on, you know, the township's interest in exploring another venture, a venture of the designated CIC?
John Eastman, village resident, township trustee, many hats. The township trustees have not discussed a CIC. What I looked at it, so I'm also the township's designated non-voting representative to community resources. So I attend the community resources meetings, but I'm a non-voting member. That if there was a CIC established that included the possibility of development of land within the township, then it would, I think, my reading of the Ohio Revised Code is that probably one of the trustees would sit on that board, along with village representatives. I think the township trustees are definitely interested in things that would improve tax revenues to the township as well as to the village and to the schools. The funding situation from the state is, as you know, as a village, is very, you know, you've had some real setbacks in terms of funding. It's even, I'd say, been harder on the township trustees because there's fewer alternatives of funding sources. So economic development would clearly be an improved funding source. The other thing that the township has definitely said is that commercial development would take place only adjacent to or part of the established villages and not in outlying areas. So the township is really looking at maintaining the rural part of the township as agriculture and have zoning that could be commercial or industrial be only in conjunction with the established villages, Clifton or Yellow Springs. So I'm not sure if that directly answered your question, so I'd say there's interest in continuing to explore the ideas, but there's been nothing discussed formally.
Okay. Thanks.
And I just wanted to quickly point out what I gave Mr. Bristol, the rundown of comparison of CIC powers versus the powers of the Port Authority. The ability to receive property and sell property efficiently is something that the Greene County CIC, it's a great benefit for the county to have, and also being the Greene County CIC is set up as a 501c3, we can receive donations, usually it's donations of land, that we can then divest from or strategically invest in conjunction with another development, which is a lot easier than the county government trying to divest of land where you have to go through a formal surplus process. So there's some administrative benefits to a CIC for sure. But again, I think that's something to take in totality with everything else you need to weigh in that as well.
Okay. Thanks, Pete.
All right, thanks, Pete.
The May timeframe to set something up just sounds like out of the realm of possibilities personally. I mean, this doesn't seem like a priority to me. Not right now, considering what we have on our plate, but that's one opinion.
Well, I think this would be the kind of thing that would be helpful to have the new manager in place for. But I think it is a think we need to be thinking about economic development, so I would say not putting it off too long, because this should be a priority.
And what we're talking about initially is setting up a task force, right? So.
Unless you have other thoughts about how, whether you just want Gary, me, or whatever to sort of investigate the kind of things that we listed here. I mean, I guess first of all,
people going off and investigating.
Right. But I also think we could potentially benefit from a new manager and whatever expertise they do have. That some new ideas, bringing new ideas to the table. Maybe just wait a couple of months and, I think all of the candidates definitely identified economic development as probably the #2 priority after the water plant coming in. So I think it would naturally be something that they would be picking up. And to me, this is just one of the pieces of how we move forward on economic development. And certainly answering these questions, doing investigation, that can be done individually.
Okay,
So you want to do a task
Well, how big of a
force?
task force were you thinking?
Well,
Or say two
we
council,
said
one?
two council members, someone from Community Resources, a Miami Township trustee, and three other people that we would appoint, that council would appoint. So what I'm hearing is wait till we get the new village manager in place. I'm not hearing like, yeah, we need a CIC, but I'm not hearing no either. So I'm sort of in between.
Well, and for me, this was a whole lot of new information. I haven't seen like what a port authority is versus a CIC. Is it something you'd want to have? Clearly, Greene County has both we're a pretty small village.
But we don't want a port authority. We would not do
No,
a port authority.
No, I know,
Yeah.
but just like to what, just even understanding exactly the relationship, I don't have any of that. So if we want to, I don't care if we could create a task force now and have that ball rolling. It wouldn't bother me one way or another. But because you've done nice work here, and those are good questions, it seems like. So I don't have to stop you.
Jerry?
Well, I need to recommend.
I know, but any,
just go with it.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Okay, I do like your idea, Karen, getting some fresh eyes in with a new village manager and so forth. I think me and Mary Ann can kind of move forward trying to get some of the answers to some of these other questions. We got 2 council members, we heard from John. I don't think it's going to be that difficult to get someone from community resource to work with us. And knowing that it's all preliminary until we get the new village manager in place. And I also agree with you, Lori, that we need to move forward. So a little bit more time on our part, a little bit more effort, but I think we can handle that. And because I surely don't want all of a sudden, oh, we need to do this October, we need to do it, have it done by December. I think, because there are a number of CICs just within the state. And I think it would really help us to see how some of the smaller ones did work and so forth. And also try to digest the information that we just received on Port Authority. Because, digesting that is, we may come back and say, heck, we really don't see the need for a CIC, we'll look for it. But I think we need to get these questions answered to the best we can.
it almost seems like to me, question 5, determine what human, financial, and technical resources would be needed to establish and maintain a designated CIC. That to me is like almost the first question that needs to be answered, because do we have the capacity to do it? And all of these, you know, a lot of the other questions are more, how does it operate? So maybe if that's something you guys could work on. I mean, there's going to be legal fees, there's going to be, I mean, just the fees of putting it together. So it might be something you want to talk to Chris, get some input from Chris Conrad about. So just establishing and then maintaining it, running it, operating it, is the other piece. Can it be done without staff? Can it be done as a volunteer organization?
Well, I mean, it seems to me that, you know, kind of putting this out there, you know, we're indicating that if there are citizens that are interested in possibly working on this, that, you know, I think it's good to have that out there, and, you know, we see where it goes. But the other thing is, I imagine that no matter what direction we go in, this gets back to what is our economic development plan in a comprehensive manner going to look like. So is that a combination of these pieces? Is it something else? And so I like the idea of starting to talk about those things.
And one thought that I have is that we had the economic sustainability group, which came up with an economic sustainability plan. And I would think that if we were to establish this CIC, or even if the village, if in some other way we have a mechanism for economic development that's attached to the village government, that plan would be the foundation. At least to start off with. People did this work, and here we have this plan. Take it and tweak it and make it, I think, more concrete.
Well, and I guess, to me, I mean, I think, evaluate whether it would make sense for the CIC to oversee the development of village-owned property, specifically the Glass Farm and the Dayton Street property. I mean, I don't know why else we would be creating a CIC if that's what we didn't want them to do. I mean, to me, that is why we would create it, because we have property that we want to develop. And we want to use the benefits of the tax exempt benefits, the benefits that Pete was describing to do
That's
that.
not, you're saying, I think, that it's not really a question.
Yeah, it's
That
not
would
a
be one
question.
of the functions.
That's
given.
it.
That's it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is a good start to the discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think Jerry and I, we can keep working on this.
away at
Wait, Great,
Thanks.
wait till we
Thanks.
get a village
Thank you.
manager and then bring it back.
Great.
Thanks, Pete. And John, we've already talked about water, so. And we had a great proclamation. Your mother was here. It was wonderful.
Brother Roy.
Roy, yeah.
It's been the Eastman night.
Manager's report. Kent, could you review your report?
I just mentioned that, well, a couple of things. Comcast and Time Warner are proposing to merge. I'm not personally optimistic that will happen. If the FCC has any sense at all, they will turn it down. But on the chance that it does go through, Time Warner has to divest itself of some of its customers. And so they're proposing that Charter Communications take over the Time Warner cable customers in Ohio. So we're just, all I can say at this point is it's something that's developing, hasn't happened yet. Hope it doesn't happen, but and I will point out that the three cable companies were at the very bottom of the rankings for customer satisfaction. So it's sort of, it's just a question of with whom do you want to get lousy service. So it's not going to make a big difference anyway. This is construction time, and so we have lots of bid packages out or coming. One is for a package of the Cemetery Street water line and the storm and sanitary sewers on Limestone Street, and a water line from Walnut Street to the new hotel. So all those have been bundled into one project, and it's been advertised. We're waiting for contractors to contact us and ask for specs, and I've not heard from anybody yet, so hopefully I will soon. Just on a side note, the Cemetery Street water line was done partly so homemade could build homes there, and the village has had the property surveyed, but never actually formally had it subdivided. So we don't have anything to sell yet. So I'm going back, that's another loose end I'm trying to pick up, getting the subdivision approved so we can sell lots to homemade. Our tree trimming contract is up for renewal. Our solid waste contract is up for renewal. And we're going to be replacing some sidewalk ramps around the village at the intersections where they currently don't meet ADA requirements. So we're going to be tearing up some and putting new ones in. So we'll be bidding all that stuff. So it's going to be, the next few months will be very busy. Solid waste is on the agenda later for discussion. But what it comes down to is we have a contract where we pay so many dollars a month to have our solid waste collected, and our fees are not bringing as much money as we're paying. So that obviously can't go on, and we need to be looking at an increase in solid waste rates. We have a new contract coming up, I believe, in August or September, and I'd be very surprised if it's less than the current one. So another reason to look at rates for solid waste.
Is there any discussion of considering, of looking again at other providers?
Well, you do go for bid, yeah. You'll probably get more than one. We can also do it differently. The village is doing it in the least efficient, least cost-effective, least environmentally sound way we can. So,
I would like to reconsider. I would definitely like to look at Waste Management seem to have some interesting options with compostables, and I think some of their recycling options are pretty interesting.
Okay. Yeah, when the village got out of the solid waste business and started contracting, it was because we wanted to recycle, and it wasn't feasible to do it on our scale. So that's when we went to a contractor. And the best way to do it is to just dump everything in one container, let the hauler take it to their material recovery facility, dump it on a conveyor belt, have trained staff sort through it, pull out the recyclables. Everything else goes to a landfill. But Yellow Springs, this is 20-some years ago, decided that it would be better if everybody had a recycling bin and everybody sorted their own garbage, because it would be educational and it would be good for our souls. And I pointed out at the time that it's less environmentally sound because you send 2 trucks around. It's less effective because asking 3,000 people to decide what's waste and what's recyclable, they make mistakes in both directions.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
I think
there are a lot of reasons it doesn't make any sense.
should
But I
just
was told
revisit
that
that.
that's what Yellow Springs wants. So I said, fine. That's what we've been doing ever since.
Okay.
Well, yeah, okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Now we'll consider other options.
Okay.
Okay.
Ken?
Yes?
To add one snippet to what Kent just said, is that a lot of the technology on the part of the waste companies has changed in the intervening time. So the ability to take commingled waste and separate the recyclables is far advanced today than it was when the village instituted its original policy. So even with the same considerations then, if you took the same considerations, you'd come to a different conclusion because the technology has changed.
Okay. Thanks, John. Anything else?
We hope we will soon be able to let people pay their utility bills with a credit card.
Great.
And I think that's it.
Great. Thank you. Judy?
Well, I just wanted to thank council for once again sending me to lovely clerk camp, where I learned many things. And was once again made grateful that you are in fact my council and not most of the other councils out there, which seemed really scary. It was actually a very good couple of days.
Future agenda items, Kent just mentioned the solid waste. Now, are these 2 items for the next meeting? Are these intended for the May 19th meeting?
Not necessarily.
Okay,
Just
what about
future.
the Sutton Farm proposal?
We can do that, yeah, let's take it up.
So, but what about though, the solid waste? Are you ready to bring that, or do you want to wait?
We're losing $1,000 or $2,000 a month. If there's a chance that you will seriously consider lower cost options, we may not have to raise rates. So I would say wait until we bid the new contract.
Okay.
And absorb the few $1,000s in losses over the next few months.
Okay. We added the Planning Commission report to the June 2nd meeting. What else? Do we have legislation, Judy or Kent? For the May 19th meeting?
Not that soon. I'm hoping by June we can have something on the CBE.
We've got a lot of meetings that week. Should we consider canceling the meeting?
Cancel what meeting?
Canceling.
Great.
Oh, that was the May 19th meeting. The May 19th meeting. I mean, we literally have nothing on the agenda.
Well, it's canceled.
And we've got interviews that week.
No. Cancel.
With the caveat that
Obviously, if something
Right.
needs to be on there, obviously, we want to have it if we need it.
Okay. I mean, at this point,
We're working on starting our 4th hour right now.
yeah, Kent, do you know of anything?
No, I'm not worried.
Okay. So,
I have one thing that I would like to have on a future agenda,
Mhm.
and it's not imminent, but I would like to have a discussion, sort of maybe a reaffirmation about green space and what our priorities are for funding green space around the village, and have Krista come and talk with council and have it be advertised so that any villagers who want to be involved can be involved in the discussion. We'll have, how much are we going to have?
about 125.
25,000, which I think it's important that we just reacquaint ourselves with what we want, what we're about in regard to green space. And it's possible that something could come up like this, and it could take more than $125,000 of our money. So I think I'd like to just have us be on the same page in terms of where we think important, what our criteria are, and what is really critical to us.
I think that would be good. Yeah, I mean, I think some of the discussion, Krista thinks, because we are talking about property, some of it she believes is executive session.
Yeah, I can see that that's
discussion, but I think we can have a general discussion in public session.
Could I respond? I worked for the Open Space Fund for many years, and I bought 3 or 4 farms for the village in the time I worked here before. And we always had a fund, and I never considered it as being a cap. In other words, I just considered it a token or a marker, that if something came up for sale, and it was $500,000 and we only had $250,000, there's lots of ways to come up with the difference. Whether it's a mortgage loan like any other farm, any other person wanting to buy property might do, or tapping the village's reserves. You know, we've made loans to ourselves in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And well, we just did that last year. We loaned the electric fund loaned the village money to pay off the Bryan Center bonds. So the village has got a lot of resources, and I've never considered the Mountain Green Space Fund to be a limit.
Yeah, I agree. And I think my point is, if we know what we want,
Yeah, no,
ahead of time,
I think we want
then
to
we
have
have
the
to-
meeting, definitely.
Okay.
But I hate to keep saying this, that could actually be a very good discussion to have with the new manager. I mean, that is,
Oh, yeah.
that's a fundamental discussion.
Yeah, that's
That person
what I
should
said,
be
I
there.
don't think it's imminent, but I
Right.
don't
Want it
want
on
it
the-
on the.
You want it on the
Yeah.
future agenda item.
So I think we should just make the decision, and we will, I guess, the caveat that unless something comes up, a piece of legislation comes up that we absolutely have to do on the 19th, that we are canceling the May 19th council meeting.
So I'll notice that as a canceled meeting on the 12th, so that if anything comes up between now and May 12th, yeah, I can change it. Otherwise, that notice will come out that week that it's
Okay.
canceled.
It's a tentative plan at this point.
Yeah.
Thank you. I like ending a meeting that way.
On a
Cinco
high
de
note.
Mayo, anybody ready to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.